Hello everybody, it's Jerry at Pale Moon Ranch. I'm here with master woodworker Bob Crutcher at Heartline Ranch. We're getting ready to make drawers for a couple end tables that we're making, and we're going to do a little practice run here doing hand cut dovetails for these drawers. So we're going to do this little tutorial here while we do a practice, because Bob hasn't done them in a few years and I've never done hand cut dovetails, so we're gonna...
You may get some good laughs in, but hopefully it won't be all that serious. Okay, so we're going to attach this piece into here, basically just like this, so that this piece fits down into this piece. Now, in order to do that, you have to cut what we call the tails first, and so I'm going to lay those out.
What are we missing?
There it is. Okay, so
can I hold that for you to help?
Sure.
So you want to lay it on here just at the depth that
we
want to put those tails?
Yeah, about where we're going to put those, and then for now I'm just going to put a real light line there, and then I'm going to put a mark here. And let's put a mark here. Let's leave, put another mark there, another one there. Now you don't have to do that, but I did that because earlier when we were doing one, I didn't do that, and then when I went back to mark it, I didn't feel like they were spaced right. So, so
you're just estimating your distance, or where you want to put the
exactly
tails?
Yeah. And so see, I'm going to want those about that far apart. So then I'll take a small gauge here and I'll put it right about there. It's fairly close, you know. Like I said, those were just general terms. So, and then the next one's going to come down to here, right to there. And we'll put it, and what you do now in woodworking, like a lot of other things, when you make a mark, you put your pencil or your knife where you're going to make your mark, and then you bring your square to you. It will prevent mistakes. Okay, so see, we have, that's what the size of that tail is going to be.
You see that in the camera? So there's the two marks. That's the width of the tail.
And then we're going to come over here and we're going to put this one a little closer, because that's going to be a space. And I'm going to cut it. I'm going to show where that one goes, right there also.
Okay.
And then I'm going to come up here to the top, and I'm going to draw a line there, and that's where that's going to go.
This is the other tail down here?
Yes. So now we take a bevel gauge and we put it right here. And we'll draw.
I'm going to take just a minute here to explain how we set up that angle gauge. The way we set the angle on the angle gauge for these dovetails is we use what Bob calls a 7-in-1 rule. What we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of scrap, or it could be a piece of paper, whatever. We're going to measure 7 inches down the side of this board and make a mark at 7 inches. Then we're going to measure over across the top 1 inch. And then we're going to set the angle on our angle gauge by putting the top of it on the 1 inch mark and the bottom of it on the 7 inch mark. And that'll give us the angle we want for our dovetails.
And then we're going to need another one right over here. So we'll come over here. And we put another line there. Now this line, I'm going to erase that little bit of it because that shows it going down past there, which I know what it means, but for purposes here.
We haven't shown yet scoring a line there to.
Yeah, that's right. Good point. You know what we do? We're going to take this and we're going to cut a dovetail so that this two goes in here, and basically it fits in here like this, only back here.
Right.
And that's going to fit right about there.
So we want to score a line that is the depth that we want those tails to go in, which would be about half the width of our drawer front.
Right.
So we set this gauge to be about half the width of that drawer front, which we've already have it set there. And we'll use that to then score the face on here. That'll give us our depth of our tails.
Right.
Right? And then you want to explain how you do that accurately. So you do that on both sides and on the ends.
Yeah, and as you can see, I've already scored this one. And then on these ends, I find that it's easy. It's more accurate to take a small scale, square scale. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I was thinking about fishing. You come over here and you go from here to here. So I've connected these lines
All the way around.
all the way around. And this side I did already. But I'll go over it again, show you the same thing. We score that line also right there. This is really hard to see up on a camera like that, but I think hopefully you get the general idea. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to want to come over here where the first tail here is, this first one right here, and we're going to draw a line from here to there. Okay, and then I already drew that other line a while ago. Now we have one more line that we have to draw that's right here. So we come over from there, and I find it works easier for me anyhow. If you put your pencil where you want it to be, take your square over to there, and then come down. But I thought Jerry had a little, he likes to do his a little different way. It's not a right or wrong, whatever works for you. I learned from a very wonderful craftsman, and Stephen Proctor, and he was very adamant on his things. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to make cuts for these two tails, and then we're going to have to cut this down and cut that.
I'm going to do a recap for a couple of reasons. Mostly to get up close so you can see better what Bob's doing, but also because, as Bob says, everyone has their way of doing things. Or so to speak, there is more than one way to skin a cat, and I'm going to skin this cat just a little bit differently.
I'm just arbitrarily choosing to make my dovetails the same length as they are wide, and of course the dovetail will be as wide as my side panel on my drawer, so I'm just using that, and I'll use that same distance for the length of the dovetail. I could do them separately and make them longer, but in this case I'm not. Helps if I put that up on top. So I'm just setting that blade right to the edge of the board and tightening up my tool. Sets that. So like I said, alternatively I could decide that I want them to be, you know, some arbitrary length, like half the distance of my drawer front, or whatever. In this case, I'm not. So in this case, I'm now going to scribe the depth of my dovetail. This is the drawer face, so these would be the depth of the socket, well, the length of the length of the dovetail, and then the depth of the socket. So in this case, like I said, they're both the same, so I don't have to change the tool. So I will cut my sockets in here later. And then on my side, I'm going to mark the length of my dovetails. Since I'm going all the way through, there's nothing else to mark. So mark both sides. And you want that scribe to be deep enough that it will catch the chisel, because that scribe mark is going to give us a very accurate cut, because the chisel will sit down in it. So when we tap down and cut out that edge, it should be very precise. I'm going to mark the sides too, because we got to take out that section there, so we want to be able to have a line for the saw. Bob likes to use a square and draw that line with a knife. I think this works just as well myself. You just make sure, it's set to the width, as long as you get it on there. It's narrow, so that's what makes this difficult, but if you're careful, it comes out. You can verify it if the two lines meet perfectly. Both sides. And there you have it. So it's all scribed, ready to make our mark.
We are choosing in this case to make arbitrary dovetail sizes, one smaller and one larger, with arbitrary spacing. You could, of course, carefully measure and map out your dovetails for a more symmetrical look.
In this case, we're doing one smaller one and one larger one. So I make a little mark there, and then I'm going to use the square. In this case, oops, I'm going to put it this way so I can see my mark. And I'm just going to draw a line across there to mark where it is. This is for the saw. You could use a knife here, but the saw is not going to ride in this knife mark. You're going to cut inside this line. All I'd say is, if you're going to use a pencil, just make sure it's very sharp so that you get a very precise line. I'm going to mark that across there. The marks I made on the front to tell me where they are pretty arbitrary, so you don't have to worry too much about accuracy on this. These lines I'm putting across the top are going to be the critical one, because they're going to be, so that's why we're using a square. Make sure they're lined up on each side exactly the same. Now that I have those, I will use my angle. Just make a little mark here so I can see the dot when I use my guide here. And then I'm going to use my guide that I set to my 7-1 rule, and mark my dovetails, one side of them. Again, very sharp pencil. You want these lines to be very precise, or your dovetail is not going to come out clean.
I misspoke here. On the sockets or female dovetails, you want knife lines because you will be cutting with a chisel. But here we'll be using a saw, so no knife lines.
Again, with the knife. Do the other side. Use the outside. Okay, now we have everything on there we need for the saw to go over and put it in the vise and cut these lines and these lines. And then we'll chisel the middle one out.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring my saw, and I'm going to cut this. And if you notice, I don't know if you can see on camera, but I am tilting my saw blade so that it fits with that slope,
That angle that you
that
cut.
angle.
Down to your score mark.
Yes. And that's just about right there. Now I'll come down to the next one. And you notice I help it get started with keeping a finger on the blade to force it to remain there. And I have a little more play there than I like, so I'm going to bring this in a little more to make sure, because that play, that vibration equals problems. All right, now we've got that one. So now we have 2 more cuts to make. And what I like to do is to cheat a little. I like to cut them all on the same, going the same way. So I need to take and connect this line, and these lines are connected. So what I need to do is I need to take and draw another, I have to draw another line for that angle. Same angle, nothing changes. Only thing changes is that I'm going to cut it all from one direction. A couple of months from now, I probably won't care. But right now, I do. And everybody's got a different opinion on that. You know, I was trained by a really highly skilled woodworker who was very famous, and he was very adamant you had to learn how to do it with both hands. I was a slow learner, it took a while, but
So to clarify, what Bob's doing is he's marking the dovetail on both sides so that he can flip the board over and cut the opposite angle using his right hand for all the cuts instead of having to cut left-handed.
Yes.
Which I can certainly relate to. Some of us were not born with a left hand.
yeah, well, my left hand's only to hold something for the right hand to do the work. Now you notice I'm going at this very slowly and carefully, and you know, you let this go, the saw will decide when you got that curve going right, the saw will take over. Right now we're having a little battle. I think I had a little too much vibration. There we go. Okay. Now you can see, obviously, this is very clear that this is going to be a dovetail. You see the angle and the distance on it. So now I've got one more cut to make going this direction before I start on the cut going the other direction. But the other two are pretty standard. They're just straight line cuts. You know, for fun, let's try this one.
What Bob has here is just two different styles of saw.
Saw.
The real difference between them is just the handle. One's got a pistol grip and the other's got a just a straight up handle.
Yeah, and this one's very fun. This one's nice, but I'll be honest with you. That's a new saw that I haven't ever really used, but time or two. This one just seems, that made it, you saw me struggling getting started on the other one, and this is nothing. Cuts like butter. Just goes to show that sometimes when you think you're buying something that it's been considered an improvement, it's not always an improvement. But you notice now these are both dovetail. Both of the tails are I don't know what you call it. You can tell what they are now. We've got two cuts in them, and there they are. You can see them and where they're going to be. So now I have to cut, and I have to cut down here, down to there. And when I look on the back of this one, on this cut, that one's good. I've got a little bit farther that I have to come down on this little cut right here because it's just not quite far enough. So even I'm going to have to take it in here. I can chisel it, but it's a whole lot easier to do it like that. And now that line comes down to there also. So now I need to cut this line off and cut that line. Now as you see, you look on there, that's a pretty clean cut right there. It's going to need a little chisel work right in the inside, but that side I split a knife line pretty much down the center. When you consider how many years it's been since I've done that, I'm pretty happy about this. So that's that one done. So now we have another one on the other end. And basically same thing. As you see, that piece has been removed successfully. So now I have to remove this middle piece. And that piece won't be able to be removed with a saw. That'll have to be removed with a chisel because you can't get a saw blade in there to go at that angle. So that means I'm needing to chop that little center out. And that's going to be my my tool. And then I need to tap it gently. There we go. And basically you just come right before your line. You want it, I guess let me bring it over to you and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, I have a knife line that goes from here to there. I'm going to take right in front of that knife line and I'm going to chop this off. And then I'm going to flip it over on the other side and come from the other side. Then I will take little shavings off until I have it fit perfect. Okay, and then I taper my my angle some, then I flip it over, and I haven't gone all the way through on the other side yet. Don't misunderstand me. However, I don't want that chipping out all at once in a big tear out, so I'm going to come over here and chip away some of it from there. Then I got to remove some of this, so I'm going to put it upright, and I'm going to pop it out of there. But you notice I'm very careful, because if you pop it out of there wrong, you'll tear a big chunk out of here, and that won't look very good. So now I got that started, I'm going to come back over here. Now then, when I did that, you notice this one popped out, but it didn't matter because I left this here. So now I can come from that side over and then to that side over, and that'll have that cleaned up. To clean that up, I'm using what they call a dovetail chisel. And they call it that because the point comes way back to here, which enables me to have a flange. It's a little wider on the sides than it is in the center. That enables me to get in here and take a little piece out in the side there that would really be a booger to do. And you notice I tap lightly. You need to make sure that your chisels are sharp enough that if you just tap lightly, it'll go right through. And if you look on there, I've got a little hump that I'll have to take out of there, but it's a pretty smooth cut. They're not supposed to be all raggedy.
Bring that in here for a nice close look. Very good.
That's it for the male portion of the Dovetails, the end of part 1. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week for part 2, where we'll do the female portion, or the socket portion of the dovetail. Take care.